Hi, and welcome to Genre Chat. Today we have a special guest and one of my friends. She's very, very dear to me. Most of you may have met her at a conference or two, and you know her from her blogs. But today she's talking to us about something very interesting. I have Edie Melson today with me. Welcome, Edie. Tell us what genre we're going to talk about. And I thank you that you wore the appropriate attire.
Well, I'm very excited to get to hang out with y'all today. I'm getting ready to go riding as soon as I finish my tea. So, of course, I'm going to be talking about steampunk.
And why did you choose steampunk to write in?
Well,
Why did you choose it?
I've always loved science fiction and fantasy, but what many people don't know is that my background is in costume design. And my
Mhm.
favorite era for costume design was Victorian. And steampunk is an alternative universe subgenre of science fiction and fantasy, and it's set with a Victorian theme.
I never heard about this until you told me about it when you were dressed like this. I was it 3 years ago at Blue Ridge.
Yes.
Now, can you give us some history of steampunk and what authors write steampunk?
Steampunk is influenced by and kind of plays off the style of the Victorian era scientific romances of Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, and even Mary Shelley. A lot of times there are there are other works that have sort of played into it. For those of us who are of a certain age, we might remember the TV show The Wild Wild West.
Yes.
That was actually a Western steampunk is what that was. But the idea behind steampunk is what would have happened to the world if instead of going instead of going from mechanical to digital, we just went from large mechanical to micro-sized mechanical. So everything in steampunk is steam driven, it's Victorian mindsets, things like that. The only difference from the Victorian mindsets is that you will see strong female characters who are doing as much or more than their male counterparts.
Oh, now I know why you like steampunk so much. It is, I love the Victorian era myself. And if you could, can you reach behind you and grab something that could be steampunk? I know your hat. I love your hat.
My hat, anything that is clockwork, any sort of clocks, gears. Also, you'll find that these lights, sometimes like this.
Oh, wow.
So those are all very, very steampunk-ish. And steampunk also incorporates dirigibles or, like the Hindenburg, that sort of hot air balloon thing. And a lot of the travel styles are mechanical, a lot of trains, things of that nature. There are some steam powered automobiles.
Mhm.
But in my books, I talk a lot about the scientists who have integrated gadgets and mechanical devices into human flesh. So you have like a mechanical uh, living flesh hybrid. They've done it with equines, horses, people. They have servants that are robots, but everything it works off of gears. Even, of
Mm.
course, you couldn't have steam driven in your body, but it all works off of gears and things like that.
So if somebody wants to blow off steam, they really literally can do it in one of your novels, right?
Yes, yes, they can. It goes way beyond just the genre for a writer. There's a whole movement. As a matter of fact, I have a picture here, if you don't mind me sharing my
No,
screen.
not at all. Please do.
There is an entire city in New
Oh,
Zealand
wow.
that is the steampunk capital of the world.
And
And
where is that?
it's in New
New
Zealand.
Zealand.
Yeah, and so the town just lives this way. They have a big festival, but you'll see this type of stuff um, 365 days out of the year. So it is not just a genre that you'll see in reading, it's or in writing and reading, it's also an entire movement. There are steampunk festivals. The costuming is very
Yes.
important, you'll see here. And even there's a whole music
Oh, wow.
that has popped up. This is my favorite, Steam Powered Giraffe.
Oh, wow.
Find them on YouTube. Some of the genre is dark, like a lot of secular ones, but there's also a lot of lightheartedness, a lot of humor. There are several people who write it in the Christian industry. I think of the Infernal Devices series that is still popular. I'll have to look up the author. I suddenly went brain dead. But there are just a lot of things out there that people aren't really aware of. And with the new Sherlock Holmes movie
Yes.
with Robert Downey Jr.,
Mhm.
that is also very, very steampunk. So you find it in a lot of TV shows and a lot of movies. Even Harry Potter kind of gives a nod to the
Yes.
steampunk-esque feeling in many of the scenes, particularly in Diagon Alley.
Now, what have you learned in this writing this genre? What have you learned maybe about yourself, or a writing tip you could give while writing in this genre, this specific genre?
Well, I think the biggest thing I've learned is the importance of world building, because
Mm.
in the steampunk area, the people who are involved in steampunk, they're extremely protective of their genre, and so you have to be very accurate. But I'm also introducing new readers to this area, and so I have to be able to give them a feeling, a taste of the atmosphere without overwhelming them with details. And I love doing that. I love figuring it out, working from this huge world that I've created and then paring it down to a few sentences that just let people figure out what I'm really talking about.
Now, your book alone, would you consider that steampunk?
Not at all. It's just pure science fiction. I do have
Okay.
series coming out. The first one will come out on May 1st, and they are steampunk fables, grim reminders that happily ever after doesn't come without a price. And the first one is a retelling of Robin Hood from
Oh,
a
wow.
Marian perspective, and it's set in a steampunk universe, and it's called Maiden of Iron. The second one coming out will be called Geppetto Gene, the Geppetto Gene, and it's basically a young man who was injured in the first book, and it's his story about how he becomes a real boy again.
Oh, that is so interesting. So now, if you want to write steampunk, do you build the world first? Do you choose your character first? What's important about writing in steampunk, and what's the difference in writing steampunk versus a say a novel like Alone, like your novel Alone?
Well, it depends really on how the writer writes naturally. I wouldn't change my organic style of writing just to write in a different genre. Although steampunk is a subgenre of science fiction, so I haven't gone very far away from my but I think you just have to be very aware of what is supposed to be in a book that already has a very hard line defined genre like steampunk.
What needs to be, are there definite things that have to be in a steampunk book to make it steampunk?
Yes and no. Rules will tell you that there needs to be some sort of background character of Queen Victoria. You need to at least reference that Queen Victoria is on the throne, even if you're writing the Wild Wild West in America. You will see occasionally in that TV show they reference the Queen. and they talk about that. So generally it is expected that that is the case. Also, it needs to be very gadget driven. Lots of cool things, lots of pistols and lightning arrows and all sorts of devices like that. So gears are very important. But I think about, if you think several years ago, there was a movie that came out called Hugo. It was
Yes.
set in France in the 1920s. And that is actually considered a subgenre of steampunk because it had
Ah.
all the gears and the clockwork and things like that. So there are exceptions, but in general, especially when you're writing at the beginning, you need to not try to be the exception to the rule. You need to go ahead and learn how to follow the rules before you spread out. Whether your first book is published or not, you still need to make sure that you're aware of how to do things within the generally accepted guidelines.
So how did you get into steampunk? I know you like the Victorian era, and costuming. So how did that develop into, and you're a writer, and how did that develop into steampunk?
Well, I have always been a fan of the classics. So Jules Verne, Around the World in 80 Days, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, all of those books they populated my childhood. And so when I began reading and writing, I started with science fiction, but I kept going back to my roots, which was I love to do, because of my costuming background, I love the rich velvets and the things that populate the rooms in the Victorian era. You know, the mitts,
Yeah.
all of the little gadgets and gizmos. And, you know, the two necklaces that I have on, one of them is um, a bug with a clock in the middle of it.
Oh, I love it.
One is just a gem with clockwork in it. And so I love all of those fiddly little things. I love all the details.
Yeah, I was going to say the details. Now, what advice would you give someone who's never written it but is intrigued and maybe wants to write steampunk? I mean, where would they go to learn? What kind of research would they do?
I think that one of the things that I would recommend is that you read the genre. Whether it's short stories, there are several anthologies out there, all sorts of different places. And then when you start it, I would recommend that maybe you start with microfiction or a short story or even flash fiction. I think that would be a great way to see if it's a fit for you.
Are there places to go to research? I mean, you definitely would have to research the Victorian era, but anything else?
One of the things that you'll find is that a lot of people a lot of museums have extensive websites. The Victorian and Albert Museum in England has a website that probably has 100,000 pages on it. And I have all kinds of fun books that I've picked up in museum bookstores and online, a guide to Victorian England, the lower classes in Victorian England. I have one that I really love, which is a book about the underground in Victorian England. And then I actually have 2 science books. I collect old books as well. And I have 2 science books that were written in the late 1800s.
Wow.
And one of them refers to space as ether matter.
Oh, wow.
Book that was used in school. And so, you know, sometimes you can find inspiration in unusual places, but I recommend that you do that. One of my favorite authors is Susan K. Quinn. She just does amazing stuff when it comes to writing in steampunk. She's a Christian author.
Now, can you spell her name for people who would want to look her up?
Susan, spelled like Susan, K-A-Y-E, Quinn, Quinn.
Susan K. Quinn. Thank you. Thank you very much. So do you, you write about so many different things, Edie, and I am so impressed with just, you have helped me with your Right Conversation, with your Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers Conference blog. I want to talk about that a little bit. What's the difference between writing steampunk and doing that? It's like you have to put different hats on, and you actually have your hat on for this. But I want you to, besides steampunk, I want you to talk about the difference a little bit, but then talk about writing for the military and prayer and writing for writers, because you're my go-to girl at the Right Conversation, and you have a special announcement about that too. I know I just gave you a lot to talk about, but
I do. I'm very excited for the second year in a row. My website for writers, The Right Conversation, has been named to the Writer's Digest top 101 websites for writers. So
that is so awesome, and I wholeheartedly agree. I think it's awesome. That's congratulations, because
I'm very fortunate because it's not just me. I have a team of about 25 writers who are regular contributors to that. And it's because of their willingness to give back and their expertise that the site was able to rise to this kind of recognition. And so I'm really, really excited about that. I cannot take credit for it, I promise you. But one of the things is it all kind of feeds into one of the things, kind of my overarching theme for all of my writer's life is I help people find the power that God puts in them and the strength that God puts in them to overcome adversity. So whether or not I'm writing to a military family who has a loved one who is deployed, or helping writers get started on the writing path and overcome that, or a strong female character like Marion in Maiden of Iron, all of these have the same theme running through it, which is God's strength in adversity and how we can find that when we tap back in to the one who created us.
Amen. Now, was there a specific writer that helped you through adversity?
There have been several who have helped me. I have been very fortunate to have been mentored by some of the greats. Alton Gansky. He
wow.
took on me and brought me on as his assistant at the Blue Ridge Mountains Christian Writers Conference when I was a nobody. Also, I think about, I had entered a book in a contest, and I got to the conference and I just felt, I knew I shouldn't have entered it. I knew I shouldn't be there. I didn't think I wanted to be a writer, anything. And I happened to have an appointment the first morning with Ramona Richards. And I told her I was fixing to leave. I was when we were done with the appointment, it was too late for me to cancel with her. So I had planned to finish the appointment and go back up to my room and pack my bags and leave. And she talked me off the ledge, and it turned out that the book that I entered that year won first place.
Oh, wow. That is great encouragement for writers, because writing can be a lonely job. And we talk, like you said, we talk ourselves onto a cliff, and we need the community so we don't jump off. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because you have been so vital for me and so many other people as an encouragement through your blogs and in Blue Ridge.
I think that so many people have done the same thing to me. And the end of the story with Ramona Richards is she was actually the judge. She was the one who awarded me first place. So she knew that she didn't want me to leave. But the same thing happened again a few years later. I was at the Blue Ridge Conference as an attendee, and I had gotten some scores back from the Genesis contest, or from a contest, and one of the scores was really low, and the person who wrote it was very brutal in the way it was written. And I thought I was okay with that, and I was in line, and Diane Mills was teaching that year, and she turned around She was right in front of me, and she said, "How's your day going?" And I burst into tears. And she again talked me off the ledge and helped me to understand that even in a critique that feels brutal, we can find value, even if it's just the strength to say, okay, I'm not going to listen to those voices. I'm going to move on. But I think there are so many people who have helped me in my journey, and I have felt all of those things that any writer feels. I still feel them today. I still fight with being insecure and unwilling to believe that I really do belong where I am. And so I have a real heart to help others get through that, because I wouldn't still be writing if I hadn't had people help me. So I want to pay that forward. I want to honor those who helped me by helping those who are coming behind.
And you do that, and you do it so well, because I'm one of those that you've helped. So, but we have just a few more minutes. I would like you to give us a few parting words of wisdom, which you just actually gave us some really wise words, but parting words of wisdom for those who want to write in steampunk.
I think the biggest thing is to, at first, read some of the books so that you're familiar with the genre, or even just watch the movies. Sometimes we get more out of watching than we do out of reading, although I'm not that way. I love to read. And then let your creativity go wild. Know the rules, but then don't be boxed in by them. Just go ahead, and that first draft, that first moment of writing, it's like getting on a horse for the first time. Just let them gallop. Just let them go free. Find some new areas. Then after you've got your foundation laid, then go back and sort of square up the edges and, make sure things fit and everything. But I think it's really important, and I think one of the things that you see over and over again in the steampunk genre is the writer was having fun. I think that comes through. So I think it's really important that we have fun with this, and that we experiment. And that's one of the things that I like about writing in fantasy and science fiction is I'm not bound by the things that are in place today or the things that were in place in historical times. I can create things. I can let my imagination reign.
That I love that analogy. Just let the horse run. I love that. Now, Edie, this is going to air probably before the Blue Ridge Conference, and some people who may not know you, can you tell them who you are and what the Blue Ridge Conference means to you? And can you tell us what to expect at the conference?
Well, I am one of two directors of the Blue Ridge Mountains Christian Writers Conference. It is May 20th through the 24th this year. It is a multidisciplined writing conference, meaning there will be people teaching on everything from devotions and freelance to fiction to nonfiction. We'll have screenwriters, we'll have speaking for writers, we'll have the writer's life, we'll have contracts and how to understand that, how to work with an agent. Every type of thing that you can imagine that would help equip you. It's a big 5-day conference. It is not an expensive conference for the 5 days. The conference fee is $350. The room fee is $70 to $75 a night, and that goes down as you get a roommate. And then the food is $140 for the whole week, and that covers Sunday night through Thursday at lunch. So the whole thing without travel comes in at around $700 to $750, and that's if you don't have a roommate. So we also will be putting up announcements for our scholarship application process this weekend. So you could follow the Blue Ridge blog, which is blueridgewritersconference.com.
And I've been twice, and I've just grown leaps and bounds by going there and meeting people. Can you give us a couple of tips of why people should attend?
Well, I think one of the things that people who are starting out in writing don't understand, they think the hard part is writing the book or writing the article. But the truth of the matter, like any business, we have certain things that are accepted and not accepted. So how do you work with an agent? How do you approach an agent? How do you approach a publisher? Are there self-publishers that are maybe don't have my best interest in mind? What are some of the wise things we can do? I actually got my start at this conference. It was begun by Yvonne Lehman. It is 38 years old, the conference is. It was taken over by Alton Gansky, and then I ran it for 1 year by myself, and then came to my senses and brought Diane on with me. And we have an entire team. And the Blue Ridge Conference website is www.blueridgeconference.com, and so that is one of the best ways to get to know us. We post blogs for writing every day of the week, Monday through Friday. I think it just gives you an overview. It also, because it is a Christian conference, the focus there is on hearing God.
Yes.
It is not on getting published quickly.
Right.
Following the path that God has for you. And I think it's so important for us to remember that even though the actual act of writing is a solitary pursuit, we need other writers. We need other people who know what we're going through and understand the creative process for somebody who puts words on a screen, because that is very different to the process that my husband, who is a nuclear engineer, goes through when he goes to work. And so it's taken him years to understand, and going to conferences has helped me meet like-minded people who then become my traveling companions on this journey.
That's the part I like the best. I've learned so much at these conferences, and I've made lifelong friends at these conferences. So Edie, congratulations on your blog. I am so excited for you, and I know why, because I go there, I read it every morning. But congratulations. And if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how would they contact you, Edie?
Well, my website is ediemelson.com, and you can also reach me through the contact form there, or edie@ediemelson.com. And I am really excited to be here. I'm excited to share this new walk in my writing life. And thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're available, because I know how busy you are. You just did didn't you just do a social media conference?
Yes, we did a marketing conference. Marketing, and it was wonderful. And so we'll be doing it again. It's just a marketing, blogging, branding, and social media conference simply for writers. And our own Bethany Jett was one of the instructors there. And so we had a fantastic time. We limited the people who could come this time, and even though we're going to increase it a little next year, we're still going to have a limit of people who come, because we want to make sure that we don't lose that one-on-one ability to work with people and help them get started in building their online platforms.
And as we know, that's so important. Thank you so much, Edie. And I'm hoping to see you at Blue Ridge. Thank you so much. And thank you all, and join us next week for Genre Chat.